Welcome to the Fogwood Files, where fog lingers among the trees and the forest holds its secrets close. The Canadian Maritimes are a land of silence and shadow, where paths dissolve into mist and voices echo without a source. Here, beneath the canopy of pines, people have witnessed things they cannot explain. Their words remain as fragments of a larger mystery, stories carried through the woods like whispers in the dark. Tonight, we open one of those accounts and step deeper into the ledger of the strange. Case File 001, Dogman Encounter, Rural New Brunswick. Date of encounter, October 2004. Location, wooded area outside Chipman, New Brunswick. Report compiled in November 2024.
I've gone back and forth about writing this down. Every time I start, I feel foolish, like I'm about to commit myself to paper as a liar or a lunatic. But the truth is, what happened in those woods near Chipman is burned into me too deeply to ignore. Maybe this isn't for anyone else. Maybe it's just for me, so I know I didn't dream it. At the time of the incident, I was 32. I'd been working in Fredericton with a construction outfit. Roofing, drywall, siding, whatever jobs came up. The money was decent, but the hours were brutal, and the stress had piled on. By early October, jobs had slowed down, and I figured I'd take the downtime to finally check in on the land my late uncle left me. My uncle was a strange man. Quiet, hard drinker, smoked like a chimney, never married, no kids. He spent a lot of time hunting and fishing, but in his last years he hardly visited his camp anymore. When he passed, the property came to me. For years, I brushed it off. Till that fall, something in me said I needed the woods. When I was a boy, I adored my uncle. He wasn't much for words, but when he took me along to the camp, it felt like I was being led into a secret world. I remember fishing trips on the Salmon River, him showing me how to set rabbit snares along the old logging trails, the smell of pipe tobacco clinging to his red flannel jacket. At night we'd sit by the stove, and he'd let me sip tea from his dented thermos while the lantern threw long shadows on the walls. Back then, the camp was a place of comfort, safety, even wonder. I never once felt fear there as a child. Maybe that's why I thought going back as an adult would help me clear my head. Still, even then, there were things about him that seemed unusual. He was adamant about being indoors before dark, no exceptions. If the sun was setting, we packed up and got inside, even if we'd just started fishing or working on something in the yard. When it came time to sleep, he always kept a loaded shotgun propped against the wall beside his cot. I asked him once what he was so afraid of, and he only said, "The woods change after dark. Best to respect that." At the time, I thought it was just a hunter's caution, maybe a fear of bears. Looking back now, I'm not so sure. Chipman isn't a big place. If you're not from New Brunswick, you might not even know it exists. A small wood mill village along the Salmon River, a scattering of houses, a few stores, a diner, and churches, surrounded on all sides by dense forests that feel endless when you're out in it. Folks there are friendly enough. Everybody knows everybody's business, but they won't speak of it out loud unless you've earned their trust. My uncle's property was 10 kilometers out of town, down an old logging road that's barely more than 2 ruts through alder and spruce. It ended in a small clearing with a single-room camp. The place was rough, sagging roofline, musty boards, the smell of damp and old smoke. But it had a stove, a cot, and 4 walls that kept the cold out. That was all I needed. Jasper, my faithful black lab, came with me. He was 10 years old. Hips not what they used to be, but still sharp, still protective. I trusted his instincts more than my own. I cannot emphasize enough. If Jasper was uneasy, so was I. The first few days went like I'd hoped. I cleared brush, patched holes in the roof, and cut a winter's worth of firewood from deadfall. Nights were crisp and relaxing, filled with familiar sounds: coyotes, owls, crickets, the chirping of night frogs, the distant groan of a moose moving through the brush. It felt good, free, almost heaven. But then the serenity of those woods betrayed me. October 12th was the first night it happened. I was reading by lantern light when I noticed it. Silence. The kind that presses against your ears. No owls. No coyotes. No crickets. Nothing. Just stillness. Almost as if all of nature was holding its breath. Jasper noticed first. His ears perked, his head lifted. He stared at the door with an intensity I'd only seen when strangers approached. His lips twitched, and then he gave a low growl that vibrated against the floorboards. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a bear or a raccoon moving through. Maybe just the wind. But the silence was heavy, unnatural. For the first time since I visited this place as a kid, I could hear my uncle's words ringing in my ear. The woods change at night. Best respect that. I barred the door that night. The next morning, I found tracks. They circled the clearing about 30 feet from the cabin. At first, I thought wolf or a big dog, but the size made my stomach twist. Each print was nearly as large as my stretched out hand, with claw marks that sunk deep into the soil. Stranger still was the spacing, too long for 4 legs. It looked more like the stride of a man. More bipedal. More. Wrong. On October 13th, the noises began, pacing around the camp well after midnight. Jasper was stiff at the door, teeth bared. I shone my flashlight out the window and caught the reflection of eyes. Amber, too high off the ground for a wolf. They blinked once, then vanished into the trees. The following night, October 14th, came the scratching. Long, slow scrapes across the siding. Not claws searching for food. No, this was deliberate. Taunting. The sound froze my blood. I shouted, firing my shotgun through the air vent. The noise stopped. With a bit of relief, I collapsed into my cot, but I didn't sleep. From that point, I knew I wasn't alone. It built gradually, like a storm rolling closer each night. October 15th, rocks struck the side of the cabin. At first small ones, then larger, like fists pounding the walls. I went outside at dawn and found nothing. No rocks, no footprints, as if the forest had swallowed the evidence whole. That same day, I went to the stream for water and felt eyes on me. Jasper refused to follow me past the treeling. He whined and paced, watching from the clearing as I filled my jug. I never shook the feeling that something was standing back in the trees, watching, weighing me. October 16th, the howl started. Not coyote, not wolves. Deeper, broader. They echoed across the river valley, long and drawn out, and when they ended, the woods stayed silent, as if every creature held its breath in fear of being discovered by some unknown evil that lurked in the darkness. That night, I saw it more clearly than ever before. A silhouette at the edge of the fog. Upright, broad shoulders, narrow waist, long arms that swung just slightly as it shifted. Its head cocked toward the cabin. I thought it would come forward, but instead it turned and melted into the mist. I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Almost. October 17th broke that illusion. It was around 2:30 a.m. I woke to a thump against the side of the cabin. Heavy, deliberate. Jasper erupted, throwing himself at the door in a frenzy of barking and snarling. I grabbed my uncle's old 12 gauge, loaded it with buckshot, and peered out the window. There it was. At the far edge of the clearing, under moonlight and mist, stood a figure. At first, My mind said bear. But no bear I've ever seen has arms that long, shoulders that square, or a head shaped like a wolf. It was massive, 7, 8 feet, maybe more. Fur dark and patchy, eyes glowing amber with a sick awareness and intelligence. It didn't just look at the cabin. It looked at me. I raised the shotgun, and it tilted its head, deliberate, mocking, as if to say, "Go on." That gesture cut me deeper than any snarl could have. It knew. It was aware. Then it moved. In 3 strides, it cleared the entirety of the clearing and slammed against the cabin. The walls shook. Dust rained from the rafters. Old paintings fell and crashed to the floor. Jasper howled like he'd gone mad. The creature circled the cabin, footsteps crunching frost. I saw its shadow slide across the windows, broad and hunched. Several times I could hear it dragging its claws along the siding, long and slow, the sound shrieking like nails on slate. I screamed in fear and frustration, firing a warning shot through the ceiling. The reply was a growl so loud and deep I felt it in my bones. For 30 minutes, it stalked me, testing me, taunting me, until finally, as suddenly as it had come, the footsteps receded into the woods. Silence pressed in again, thick and absolute. I sat with my shotgun in my lap until dawn, shaking, not daring to move. When light came, I timidly stepped outside. The ground was torn with prints, huge, canine, but arranged in a bipedal stride. For feet between steps, around the cabin, claw marks gouged the siding deep into the wood. No bear leaves marks like that. These were intelligent, as if the creature had been searching for some kind of weakness in the walls of the cabin. Near the tree-line, I found a hair, half-eaten, but not chewed apart. Dissected, opened clean, the organs removed with surgical precision. I wanted to leave that day, but I hesitated. I told myself I'd imagined some of it, that maybe it was just all a bad dream. But that night, October 18th, it came again. Not so direct this time. I heard it pacing in the trees, circling just beyond the clearing. Occasionally, a low growl rolled across the dark, deep enough to make Jasper whimper. Once, a heavy thud struck the roof, like something had dropped onto it from above. I sat awake with the shotgun all night. October 19th, I tried to pack. Every step outside, I felt it nearby, watching. The forest was too quiet, too still. I caught glimpses, flashes of movement between trees, the flash of amber eyes. At dusk, something hurled a rock the size of my fist that struck the cabin wall so hard it left a dent. October 20th, I gave up. At first light, I loaded Jasper into the truck and drove. As I turned onto Route 10, I glanced back at the logging road. I swear I saw it standing there in the mist, just beyond the alder line, watching me leave with what could almost be called a smile on its twisted face. It was proud of itself. It had won. When I left the camp that October morning, I swore I wouldn't go back. I was pale, hollowed out, and too afraid to even think straight. But fear has a way of gnawing at you, and doubt does worse. As the weeks passed, I started to wonder if I'd lost my mind out there. I told myself stress, isolation, and too much whiskey by the stove could explain it. By early November, I couldn't stand the second-guessing anymore. Against my better judgment, I decided to return, but this time I wouldn't go alone. I convinced 2 friends from Fredericton to come with me. Mark, who'd hunted with me a dozen times before, and Danny, who never believed in much of anything. I didn't tell them the whole story at first, only that I'd heard strange animals and thought maybe a bear was sniffing around the old camp. Enough to pique their curiosity. We drove out one Friday afternoon, the 3 of us crammed in my truck with gear rattling in the back. When we rolled into Chipman, I felt that same tightness in my chest. The village looked quiet. almost too quiet, smoke curling from a few chimneys, and the river black under the low November sky. Mark cracked jokes about banjos and hillbillies, trying to lighten the mood, but I noticed how quickly both of them fell silent as we left the pavement and took the old logging road. When we reached the camp, it was just as I'd left it, except colder, lonelier. The frost clung thick on the ground, and the stove's chimney gaped like an open mouth. I caught myself scanning the tree-line more than once, even while unloading gear. That first night, I told them everything. The sound of claws on the siding, the shape in the tree-line, Jasper's terror, the hand, or paw, or whatever it was, on the window. Danny laughed, but not as hard as I expected. Mark only frowned and said, "If even half of that's true, then I guess we'll know soon enough." We stayed up late, sitting by the fire, swapping stories. Around midnight, Jasper stiffened again, the same way he had weeks before. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Mark and Danny went quiet. We heard it then, movement in the brush, deliberate and heavy, circling the clearing. Something big. Danny whispered, "Bear?" But Mark shook his head. He knew the sound of a bear. We didn't see it full on that night, but twice we caught glimpses between the trees. Tall, upright, moving too fast, gone before the firelight touched it. Once, a rock hit the edge of the roof and clattered down the shingles. Danny swore under his breath. Mark chambered a round in his rifle and kept it across his lap until dawn. In the morning, we found tracks in the frost behind the outhouse. Not boots, not paws. Something in between. Long, narrow heel, splayed toes, claws at the tips. I watched Danny crouch and study them without a word. When he stood up, his face was pale. We didn't stay another night. Nobody wanted to. On the drive back, Danny finally said, "Whatever that was, I don't want to see it again." Mark just muttered, "Your uncle knew." And that was the last time I set foot at the camp. In the weeks that followed, I wrestled with whether to report the encounter. Telling friends and family brought only laughter or concerned looks. A local conservation officer dismissed my story outright, insisting I had misidentified a black bear. But I know what I saw. Bears do not walk upright for extended periods. Bears do not circle cabins with intelligence, nor do they leave tracks resembling massive wolf prints arranged in a bipedal pattern. Nearly 20 years later, I remain unsettled. The memory of those amber eyes watching me from the tree line still invades my sleep. The sound of claws scraping wood lingers in my ears. I do not claim to know what the creature was. People call it Dogman. That's as good a name as any. I believe the woods of New Brunswick harbor something unknown, something that walks the line between man and beast, predator and intelligence. Whether it is singular or part of a population, I cannot say. What I can state, with absolute certainty, is that I encountered a being that should not exist. I submit this report in hopes that others may come forward with corroborating accounts. End of report.
This report submitted by the Fogwood Files. Another account pulled from the fog and preserved in the records. If you'd like the next story to find its way to you, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll be here when the next fire is lit. Until then, stay close to the firelight, because in the woods, you're never truly alone, and something is always waiting just beyond the glow.